because I got Levi's and a skateboard, right? So if I didn't get a lot of validation, love, what I call emotional milk, how do you
Yeah.
think that manifests? And I guess you don't know the answer because it depends on the
It's you.
individual. But how does it
Yeah.
generally manifest when you become adults?
Well, so as I recall, you were an actor once too, right?
No, not an actor, screenwriter.
Screenwriter. Okay, so
Yeah.
you're look. So for instance, for me, like
Hmm.
I sold my hockey equipment, moved to New York City, never having had an acting class in my life. I'm going to be
Hmm.
an actor, right? And all I wanted to do was see my big face up on that screen, because then I would know, I'd be able to prove to my old man that I was somebody, that I was enough,
Mm,
right?
you're right.
So you can find it in the tea leaves are usually right there in front of you.
Yeah.
They were for me, right?
Yeah.
I didn't, and look, that can manifest itself in, you didn't feel like you mattered to anybody. You didn't feel like you were loved. For me, and I think men in particular, we are sort of left with this "am I enough" thing. I think across the board in society,
Hmm.
we are never really enough. The house is never big enough. The pile of money is never big enough. You're
Right.
never successful enough. It's great to run a capitalistic society, but we're never enough. And that was what it
Hmm.
was for me. And I just felt like, holy shit, if I could just, get that pilot. And then when I did,
Yeah.
called the old man up and said, "Hey, book this pilot. What'd you think of it?" And he was like, "Yeah." He did, literally did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, so I'm not going to I knew I had to come back inside, and I had to befriend the self. I had to do that healing of that little boy inside of me that never felt like he was enough, that never
Mm.
felt like he mattered. And
Hey, this is a
we're all
great,
fighting for that.
yes, we're all fighting for that. We all have our version of what you're talking about as far
Yep.
as you going to
Yep.
New York and,
Mhm.
wanting to be on the big screen, and then showing your dad the pilot that you booked and not getting
Mhm. Mhm.
it's like running home after you get the B plus on the report card and parents like, whatever,
Mhm.
I'm busy.
Yeah.
Um,
But real quick,
we
how
all
that,
definitely have our version of that. Yeah.
yeah. But I think how that manifests in a relationship is, at large, let's say you're in a fight and a back and forth about any one thing, the thing that you're fighting about on the surface. When I've gotten into a back and forth with Ashley, my most successful moments in those tough times with her is to kind of see the very protective aspect of self that's shown up in this back and forth, in this fight, if you will,
Hmm.
to then kind of go like this and look behind her and sort of imagine that there's a little girl back there that just needs to know that she's safe.
Right. Right.
And when I could see that,
Hmm.
what we're fighting about, we'll get there. But when I make her feel safe, holy shit.
Yeah. A lot of our fighting is a reaction, not a response. And I feel like if you can see not only the little child or the 10-year-old or that the person that is reacting from being hurt or whatever right now, but also if you can see the spirit of who they are truly, it definitely puts the shield down. At least for
Mm-hmm.
me.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
You
and
mean
I
like
think
their essence,
their essence, their
yeah,
spirit, their,
yep.
I talk a lot about my most solid self before I just started to exchange truth for membership, when I was hitting flow states and didn't care about people, and I just was authentically me, was
Mm,
around 10. And it was
mm,
it was me doing windmills on cardboard. It was me getting obsessed with building blocks, Legos, and
mhm,
the world felt big. It was me on a little Honda Spree 50cc scooter, just ripping up and down the street. I was the
yeah.
first kid to pop a wheelie and hold the wheelie around the entire block. I was the
So
only kid to
back
ever do
then,
that.
that was
What's that?
something. That was something.
Yeah, but that tells me how much practice, how much obsession, how
Mhm,
much I had to be in self and wanting to do this for me to even pull that off.
mhm,
And there's a spirit in that. And after my divorce, I realized I completely disconnected with that kid. And so a lot
mhm,
of what I did after that was to connect to the kid that I used to be. And this is why I say self-betterment is sometimes more about a reunion than anything else. And that's
That's
why
beautiful. That's beautiful.
I bought
I
a
love that.
Harley and I started blogging or whatever, right? And so, yeah, to see that person, that kid, I think as we become adults, we can become reactive and we can become monsters and we can
Yeah.
become, you know,
Hmm.
it's
Yeah.
it's hard to see our souls as we grow.
Well, right, because that inner constellation of self can hide that. Well, I say this: the wise self is very zen, and the wise self says, "You can have that experience. You can be the monster. You can be the wounded child. You can be the inner critic. It doesn't. You can be the manager of everyone's feelings. We're going to get something. That's all grist for the mill. We're going to get it." And so, what you did so beautifully, and I think what I try to do, is to recognize that intrinsic goodness, that soul peace, and sort of move those other characters aside and go, okay, this is who I intrinsically am. This is that aspect of soul that's here. And it's at that point that like that part's happy to come forward, but it will let you have whatever experience you're deciding to have in the moment.
Mm,
Yeah. Mhm.
mm.
Yeah. Cause you're
Yeah,
going to get
it's
something from it.
yeah, it's interesting. I feel like in relationship, if that container promotes uh, each individual to connect to that part of they used to be, or kind of their solid self,
Mm.
um,
I love how you connected to who you used to be. Like when you're that's really, that's something I hadn't thought of. I love that.
as opposed to who you used to be, as in a bad way.
No, 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 not who you used to be in a bad way. I think, and I've sort of, you know, characterize out of central casting this wise self inside of me that's probably got a Jedi robe on or two.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Yoda.
I didn't connect it to the wheelie riding kid. I think probably because my childhood was so traumatic. I haven't really ever looked at it in the way that you're looking at it. Like this is the freest version of yourself. And it's a
Mm-hmm.
really beautiful thing to think about it that way and to reclaim those parts, not as the wounded aspects of myself, but as the parts of me that were really, really authentic. That's something I'm going
Yeah,
to chew on.
yeah, and I've noticed that my in my story, stars only start to line up the more I start to connect to that, to who I used to be.
Hmm.
Hollywood fucked me up. I went to film school and spent 10 years screenwriting and sitting in coffee shops trying to sell the $1 million screenplay. Because if I sold a screenplay, for me, it wasn't about showing my dad. It was proving to my wife at the time that I
Hmm.
had value. And
Hmm.
also, it was about getting into the quad. I grew up in Hollywood. I grew up in LA. And so
Hmm.
Hollywood represented the quad, the cool
Hmm.
kids, right?
Hmm.
The prom kings. Like if this was a Breakfast Club, I was like the nerd with the sandwich that mom made me with the crust cut off, right? And so I wanted to get into the quad. So if I could just sell a screenplay, if I could,
Hmm.
and I genuinely had a desire to want to make movies, but if I could
Hmm.
just sell, and so I was so desperate that by chasing after that, I slowly over 10 years completely disconnected to the little kid playing with the Legos and popping
Hmm.
wheelies, and I
Hmm.
started to be someone that I just was very kind of outside in instead of inside out.
Sure.
And that's when nothing happened, because I feel like our potency as human beings is very low because you're in your pseudo self, not your solid.
Well,
Once I left Hollywood, once I got a divorce,
mhm.
then things started changing because then I was popping wheelies again.
Yeah, you were in your authenticity.
Well, I started doing crazy, weird shit that was honest to me. That
Yeah.
perhaps other like meeting people in coffee shops and blogging and all the stuff, right? So,
Mhm.
but that's the essence of that is the 10-year-old doing windmills or
Mhm.
obsessed with wheelies.
I could never do the windmill, by the way.
That's because you're white, baby.
Maybe that's it.
Maybe
Maybe
it's a
that's
genetic.
it.
It's a
Maybe
genetic
that's
thing.
it. I don't
Hey,
know.
listen, man. All the white boys got all the girls and all the action. So I just like fuck. I was like, I better be good at something. So I just started dancing.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah.
Anyway,